Hello everyone out there in webinar world and Facebook Live. I want to welcome you to STRAINWISE Consulting's webinar for today, Thursday, March 30th, 2017. We have a great presentation for you today, and I want to talk a little bit about the top 5 reasons why startups fail. So you're in the right place here. And of course, for those of you tuning in on the webinar, you can see the screen here. So I'm your host, Sean Eubanks, Vice President of Business Development for STRAINWISE Consulting, and I want to share with you these 5 tips. So a quick kind of introduction here for you guys that are here for the first time, just a housekeeping note. You can submit your questions through the webinar, or you can submit them on Facebook Live as well. We'll get to as many as we can on both sides, and we'll do a live Q&A after this is over. So why are you here? You're here probably because you recognize an incredibly profitable opportunity, but you just don't know where to start. And so, or you might be concerned that you'll invest a lot of time, money, and effort, but you won't be awarded your license. That could be one category of people that are here and you just want to know how to get your license. Licensing is pretty complicated, as you can see from the screen here. Cultivation application, dispensary application, manufacturing, all very, very, very robust in most cases, almost like a banker's box that gets turned in. Well over 100,000 words in most cases, and very robust. So those of you who are worried about your license, that's great. You're in the right place. Also, if you're worried that you will get awarded a license and you won't, you want to avoid basically making operational mistakes and common mistakes that way. So you're in the right place. We're going to kind of dive in. I do want to give a quick announcement on something that's very, very exciting that we're doing. It's going to be the radio station. The podcast is rolling out with our friends over at Cannabis Radio. It's going to be Blunt Business Radio. I'll be your host, and we'll start shooting that next week. So that's exciting. We'll have our first 4 episodes shot, and then we'll be off and running. And I'll be plugging that here on Facebook Live and through LinkedIn as well. So pay attention to that. We're very, very excited. Blunt Business Radio. It's going to be exceptional. If you know someone who wants to be on the radio show as a guest, please have them reach out to me, and we're happy to entertain those scenarios. All right, going forward. So a quick understanding of STRAINWISE Consulting, why we're here, why you should be listening to this webinar right now. All right, we are the most sought after consulting company for applications and management contracts in the industry. We did consult for the very first recreational license in the world, and we also consulted on 7 of the first 10. So we understand how to navigate this uncertainty that's federal regulation and all of these challenges that come about, the things that we know about the industry, things that we don't know. Uncertainty is pretty much the name of the game, but we've been there since day 1 in Colorado, and we got that first recreational license. We're very proud of that. So we know how to navigate this space. We understand in most states what you're going through. We almost have a 100% success rate on applications submitted. So we're very, very proud of that, and we want to protect that reputation as well. There are a lot of people that can write your application for you. You need to be asking them, in what states have you won, what competitive states have you won in, and show proof of that. That's very important, we think, to establishing credibility, because if you don't get your license, then it's a non-starter for you. We have 9 branded dispensaries here in Colorado, and I can tell you that I can't tell you any specifics exactly, but we are very, very excited. We're expanding quickly. Every day we're having conversations internally and externally, and we've got some exciting things going, and the plan is simple, to build this brand across the country, and we're well on our way. Which means if we have a dispensary in your state, and we do an application for you for cultivation or for processing, you already have an outlet to sell your products, which is wonderful. And it's a great way to be partnered with someone who has a vested interest in actually helping you gain your license and get up and running and become profitable in your state. So we have over 100,000 square feet of cultivation space here in Colorado. We are, of course, among the top 5 marijuana companies consulting in Colorado. We did consult to the very first vertically integrated Native American tribe selling cannabis in the United States. We're very proud of that. So you're in the right place. You're talking to the right people. I'm going to share a bunch of knowledge with you. I hope you have a pen handy and you can write some things down. So let's get started. So the top 5 reasons why cannabis startups fail. The number 1 reason is an underestimating the amount of capital needed. And I'll go through these quickly and kind of so you'll understand what the subject matter is going to be about, and then we'll dive into them deeper. So the first one is underestimating the amount of capital needed. The second one is rushing the application. The third reason why cannabis startups fail is you're overlooking construction and build out. That's a huge, huge mistake, and we'll dive into that and talk about that further. The fourth reason is that you might fail as a cannabis startup is that you're ignoring the importance of SOPs. Standard operating procedures are standard in every industry, and you can find them in just about every business. Why people continue to ignore them in a cannabis startup is beyond me, but it happens. The fifth reason why cannabis startups fail is using a cliched marketing and branding plan. So this goes without saying. We've talked about this at length. We've done a branding webinar before, but I do want to touch on this also because it's still important, something we still see. And as I travel across the country and speak and hear people speak and participate in these trade shows, I'm hearing people still kind of not aware of this. So I think the most helpful tip that I can offer you today, just in general about marketing and branding, we're going to talk about those and make sure that you're not falling for one of those cliched, old school sort of marketing and branding plans. All right, we do have a passion for this industry. We understand that everyone has the same questions, concerns, and fears. The bottom line for us is we want you to thrive. We understand that what's good for you is good for the industry. And another entrepreneur that comes into the industry and opens up a dispensary, cultivation center, processing or testing, that's good for us and it's good for our industry. So we really want everybody to succeed, whether you're using us as a consultant or someone else or going at this alone. We hope to give you enough information through these webinars to give you some form of confidence to go out and get this done. We are aware that regulators are expecting higher standards. And so that's happening. You'll see that across the state. When a state comes online, it has just very mature looking program to it. And you can thank Colorado and you can thank other states, Washington, Oregon, and the other that are leading on the recreational side to really give regulators a great chance. And I also want to tip my cap to the pioneers in this industry who've gotten started and have helped these regulators along the way by either directly lobbying, engaging attorneys and lobbyists there in their state, but helping these regulators along the way understand what the industry is about and what the potential is for the plant. So very grateful for you guys and everyone that has helped pave the way for that, and we hope that continues. We are aware that good people are forced to close shop because they lack proper tools. This is very, very common when we look at these cultivation opportunities and we do these business plans for people when they see this $24, $25 million revenue stream coming in. It's a big deal. It's not a mom and pop shop at that point. It's not something very simple. It's very, very complex. And next thing you know, they go from being a private grower to holding a $20 million asset, and the challenges, opportunities, and threats that come with being a business owner at that level. So we want to help you there. We believe success is based on finding the right tools, of course. All right, so let's start here. So mistake number one, underestimating the amount of capital needed. So I want to go through a couple of things that will kind of outline what you're going to spend money on in the very beginning. So first thing is going to be application fees, both state and local. Those can be different. What happens most of the time is the state will approve it, and then you'll get municipality along as well. You're going to have fees that are different for those, so just understanding what those fees are and how that's going to work. Application fees can be one of the reasons that you're going to spend some money. Another option could be if you're going to purchase an existing business, what that transfer looks like. So you just need to make sure that you have a line item for application fees. Proof of funds. This is going to vary state by state. Very, very important. There are lenders that are kind of popping up and investors who want to be involved in the industry. They don't know how to get involved, or they don't have approval from their family office or whatever. It's just not a viable thing for them to come out of the closet, so to speak, and say, look, I'm investing in cannabis. But there are investors out there that are helping with proof of funds, and that's something we see quite a bit and something that some might take advantage of. So you might need to get a lender. In the state of Pennsylvania, for example, we had to put aside $1 million in escrow each, high application fees and things like that. So if you have that capital, that's great. If not, there are ways to access it. But either way, you need to address proof of funds. Equipment. This is a big deal. I could spend an hour on equipment alone. This has so many different phases to it, and I'll talk a little bit about this in the design and build out part of it. but understanding the equipment. I think one of the things that we bring tremendous value for our clients is saying, listen, let's talk about equipment, talk about what's possible. So for example, if you're in a state that doesn't have flower, and it doesn't allow for flower, meaning you're going to focus on extracts. Maybe it allows for edibles, maybe it doesn't. But understanding what is possible in that state is going to kind of drive what type of equipment you're going to get. In some situations, we've been able to save clients hundreds of thousands of dollars because they had in mind some extraction equipment that was high priced, very, very expensive, and quite frankly too mature for the market that they were getting into. Something that you should invest in down the road. But running those numbers and helping them with that is something that you can save hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it just wipes away our fee. We pay for ourselves in within a couple of days of working with someone. So understanding equipment, if you're in the cultivation side of things, what is it going to take? All of those things need to be drawn out, and that expense needs to be met with real numbers, and then preferably you have a couple of vendors each. So for example, for lights, you're going to have your consultant tell you these are 3 lights that we recommend, and here's why, and then here's some other ones that we can explore. But as a consultant, your job is to educate the client and go along with them. So sometimes they'll bring their own ideas. Hey, we'd like to put LEDs. Okay, great. That is 4x what the gavitas are going to cost, and here are the 10 cultivation centers that we've designed and built out, and here's why we use this light. And hey, LED sounds great, sounds good, not necessarily proven yet. It's getting better and better, but just that conversation of LED to metal halide, HPS, you right there can save hundreds of thousands of dollars. So very, very important to have those conversations up front about equipment. Construction. You want to talk about construction. We need to get bids in. I think what would best help you is if you were going to open up a dispensary and you're talking to someone about a layout, about construction and things like that, make sure that data comes from somewhere. For example, when we do a business plan or opportunity assessment and we show people numbers, we're pulling numbers from inside our own dispensary, and that helps on a bunch of different levels. It'll help people in understanding this is where the program was for us in, say, 2012, 2013, before rec came online, and here's what you could expect your numbers to be, and here's the cost to build out, and things that are unexpected with that. So what you want to avoid is someone just saying, oh yeah, it's X amount of dollars per square feet, or you're getting information that's just basically marketing materials from the real estate agent. And I'm not dropping the real estate agent in the grease here. You just have to understand their role is to show you the property, and if you ask them questions, they might answer those questions for you to try to get the deal done, right? And they'll kind of preface it with, oh yeah, do your due diligence, and that's code for what I'm saying right now really can't be held, can't be held accountable for that. So you want to watch out for that. Make sure you're not going off of marketing materials, and make sure you've interviewed a general contractor to get these actual construction costs. So when you shift from dispensary, that's one thing, right? But when you go to cultivation, that's really where you can lose your shirt if you're not paying attention to those costs. It's really, there's so much great information out there. You can call a lighting company and get a lighting plan. You can call a consultant and get a lighting plan. You can have it laid out. There are a lot of design and build consultants kind of popping up, and they have some great ideas, and they might offer a service. So you want to look at that, and if you're comfortable with what they're presenting, that's fine. But everything should be comprehensive, and everything should ultimately get stamped and looked at by an engineer to make sure that nothing's missing. So you just don't want to go back to your investor at this point and say, oh, we forgot to do this, we're now no longer doing drain to waste, and so this has changed, and we're bringing this RO equipment in now, we're doing this for CO2, we're doing different things based on information we've gathered, and now it's going to cost more. Investors don't want to hear that. So you need to make sure that you're addressing all this stuff up front and talking about construction almost to an exhaustive point. You really want to know, and it's fair to ask this general contractor and their contractors, what am I missing? What's not here? Ask your consultant, what is not involved in this layout? And also get multiple layouts if you're in a situation where you're working with a consultant who just doesn't have any builds, right? If they're pulling information from the internet or something, the question you want to ask them is, show me the cultivation center that you've designed, and that's what we want you to, that's what we're hoping that you're getting your information from. That'll stop a lot of consultants in their tracks because they don't have that experience, right? And I'm not saying it's rocket science, but I'm saying that you would love to see those things in reality. One of the things that I really enjoy is when we're talking to a client out of state, we'll fly them in and bring them in here, and we'll show them a couple of different cultivation centers that we have and show them why we built this out and what happens, and they'll get to understand more or less the manufacturing side of how a cultivation center looks like versus what their ideas might be about it being a smaller scale grow, and understanding how things are going to look in their state. So very important. You just want to kind of rely on experience there. Working capital is a big deal. As I talked earlier about proof of funds, working capital can also be supplied by an investor. We're seeing more and more of that. It's these investors, and no offense to them, but they're just trying to get in. They're trying to move forward in some way in a very cautious way that really doesn't support the industry yet. It's not something, these interest rates that we're seeing, we understand there's a risk premium, but I find that most of these investors are putting in, they're pricing it based on what's not available, and that's a mistake for investors. They'll find themselves on the sideline because the truth of the matter is there's a ton of capital in this industry, and it's available, and there are plenty of people who've been in the industry who will fund deals, industry-specific stuff that can help you out versus using an investor that's just on the outside. But one of the ways they're trying to leak in is working capital. So if you don't have that, there are ways to access that sometimes, but more or less you want to count your working capital as part of capital is needed. All right, so underestimating the amount of capital needed, you're going to need around 3 to 5 million at a minimum. I kind of want to drill down on this for you. I know those are scary numbers for you, but don't worry about that. If you have the right investor and you have the right team behind you, you can get funding for this. We see it happen all the time. We use a particular business plan that is a combination of a pitch book and an opportunity assessment, and we've helped our clients raise up to $16 million doing that. So we know it can be done, especially when you're tying it to real estate and you're owning the building. Now you have an asset. It makes it a little bit less stressful, and investors tend to be more interested, and then you have more flexibility on their interest rates for you. So 3 to 5 million at a minimum. That is for the cultivation facility, depending on whether you're buying that or you're leasing that. Understand that improvements you make to a building, if you go in there and you put $500,000 worth of equipment and you bolt those lights on and everything sets up, understand that those lights don't go with you when you leave. So that is an expenditure that you can, in some cases you can depreciate that, and you can enjoy those write-offs, but that's not an asset that you own. That's something you need to leave with the building. And that's true for most of the upgrades that you're going to put into a facility. So 3 to 5 million, that's a safe play. We've got estimates out right now in different states around the $4 million range. But understand a cultivation facility, we generally don't like to deal with anything smaller than 60,000 square feet, especially in the states where we're helping people come online and they're one of 4 or one of 5 cultivators. It really just doesn't, we see the writing on the wall. There's going to be panic if you have 4 or 5 cultivators coming online at one time, and 3 don't know what they're doing, and they're going to fail. Their crops are going to fail the first couple of times. You'll have 2 that are standing, and those 2 are basically now 50% of the market share each. And if you're building your facility, for example, say you're going to be 5, you think, okay, we're going to get 25% of the market share, here's the patient count, here's what the conditions are, and here's what the projections look like for this state, and you don't take into account the fact that some of your competitors might fail, you might think, oh, we're going to start with 20,000 square feet, or we're going to have a 100,000 square foot building, we're only going to use 20,000 square feet of it, and we'll have a master plan to develop it. That could be a mistake. So you want to stay around 60,000 square feet or larger to meet that market, and around 60,000 square feet or larger, you're going to be easily into the $3 to $4 million range. All right, mistake number 2, spending too little time on the licensing application. Okay, I see some questions coming in, guys. We will keep those coming. I certainly appreciate it, and I will. That dropped down for a second. Lee, I see your question, but for some reason I'm having a little bit of a technical difficulty dropping that down. Let me see here. Sound worked until the broadcast began. Okay, sound is back up and running, so hopefully you're good there, Lee. Thanks for the comment. All right, so moving on, spending too little time on the licensing application. Number 1, with the license application, you want to make sure that it has a complete business plan to it. you have robust financial statements. Those are very, very important. And the financial statements there are going to be not necessarily projections yet, but financial statements explaining who you are, what your, how much capital you have, and why you're stable. So you're really projecting stability at this point. Best practices, those are things that you need to get from someone who's been in the business. There are some places, some resources online now that offer SOPs. I mean, not a bad thing. I mean, there's a whole movement now to basically copy and paste these applications in. We've been in competition, and we would really prefer to compete with people like this who are writing their own applications. It's just, it is an art. The technical writing that goes into writing the application, as of right now, is still very much an art, and it's where you're competing at, whether you want to or not. So the best practices need to come from an organization that's actually implementing those rules. If you're pooling best practices that someone put together in 2012, it's a whole other animal today, whole other industry. So you want to make sure that those are updated and current, and they're not something that maybe the regulator can find on the web quickly. They're human beings that are reading these, and if they find out that it looks like you copied and pasted and didn't put a lot of thought into it, maybe your application goes to the bottom, or maybe it fails. Security is something you want to address also on this application. You want to talk about the transportation of the product. You want to talk about you want to balance the customer experience between safety and security. If you had a chance to come to Colorado and tour some of our dispensaries, you'll see that we're balancing that really well. We want to make a warm feeling when you come into our dispensary, but there's no doubt about it that you're in a place that we need to protect, meaning that we have to have a man trap when you come in, and we want to make sure that there's a filter and a way for us to check your ID, check your medical card, and get that information in. Maybe ask you to take your sunglasses off, whatever it is that makes it secure, not only for us, but also for our other customers that are in our dispensaries. Security on the cultivation side goes into a lot of different areas, compliance-based stuff where you're going to be given a set of rules and rules and rules and rules that you'll be following, but the other thing is just securing that cultivation center for a myriad of reasons, not only just making your customers making the employees feel safe, but security and being aware of what those employees are doing and how things are, how movement of the product is taking place throughout the facility. Safety is a big deal, huge deal here. You want to be OSHA compliant. We are advocating strongly that our clients move into FDA compliance, OSHA compliance, following these different regulations, even though they're not technically regulating yet, so that when things come online, you look more favorably in the eyes of the regulators. Inventory systems. So tracking this, starting with your seed to sale tracking, all the way through. We're fortunate here in Colorado to have something called Metric that helps us with inputs. It really gives you a lot of good marketing data, actually, and understanding who's out and what products are needed. We have an exchange online, a wholesale exchange as well, that really works well with Metric, and it gives each dispensary connects dispensaries with wholesale providers, and it lets you know when you're out. So we love inventory systems, and it helps us track it. They're necessary. You have to be compliant, of course, but those things work well, starting with seed to sale all the way through. Transportation is how your product's moving, so you're regulated differently based on cultivation, right? So when that plant is cut down, you start basically a countdown, depending on what states you're in and what your regulations are, and it needs to be out the door in a certain period. That needs to be tracked. Transportation needs to be tracked. In some cases, you need a transportation license, and that will, there's some gray area there between different states on whether transportation is talking to transportation from cultivation to dispensary, meaning business to business, or you're talking transportation more like delivery service. So understanding the difference there and how those apply to you in each state is important. Chain of custody is really compliance-based. I think one of the things that we're grateful for here in Colorado is that we grew up in a highly regulated area. Compliance was everything. It still continues to be everything. The Marijuana Enforcement Division does an incredible job of communicating with dispensaries, and they have a huge job. More than 400 dispensaries still here, and so you have a lot of input, and so chain of custody is something that's probably overlooked or just not addressed. In some of the more mature industries like pharmaceuticals, you can, chain of custody spelled out for you. It's not something you give thought to, but honor the fact that in the marijuana industry, it's still new and you need to be following that and leading with those best practices. Packaging is a big deal too, because there's gray area with that, and not understanding, well, is this packaging needs to be compliant at some point from the cultivation, and then packaging that obviously goes to the consumer. So two different things. If you're vertically integrated, you'll have some efficiencies there with packaging and where you choose to do that. Most of the time it's going to happen at the cultivation level, depending on your state, depending on what's going on with you. Labeling, very, very important, also compliance driven. You'll want to address that. So as it pertains to the licensing application, you want to talk about labeling and how that's going to work, and you want to cite the legal references there. It's very, very important. A well-written application is going to have these citations on it so that it makes sense to the person reading it, saying, okay, this is where this came from, this is where the regulation came from, here's where it stipulates this, here's how we're going to follow it, and it shows that you're in the know there. So that's something that needs to be included in every application, and references along the way for sure. Labeling. Green waste is next. Green waste is a big deal. At the cultivation center, green waste can be defined as anything that's left over after the plant. Can also be fan leaves and different things. You don't want to, if we had another hour or so, I could talk about horror stories throughout the industry of people just getting, finding a leaf or something in the dumpster, and proper disposing of this and how that works is a unique challenge for each state and how that works. You also want to follow state-specific regulations and talk about that. So spending too little time on the license application, assuming it's a formality, we have the pleasure of working with a lot of very, very intelligent people and very successful folks in other industries, and so they come into the cannabis space and they're very confident. They've got this political connection, that political connection, but they're a little bit overconfident, and they think, well, we'll just have somebody write this, and they start to kind of budget shop this application process when they literally have, hundreds of millions of dollars riding on, a $100,000 application or less, or, depending on what state they're in, it can be as low as $2,500. So shortcutting this process or trying to write this on your own, we're just not there as an industry. I don't recommend that. I hope one day we get there, where it's like filing a liquor license or something, where it's more of a, you meet the requirements and you have a great shot of doing that. Right now, it's very, very competitive. It's a whole different animal. And trust me, you don't want to be short on this application. You're going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars because you wanted to save $100,000 on the application process. So I don't recommend that. Make sure you're following those and spending as much time, and make sure that you're confident about the licensing application. I'll tell you a quick story. In another state that we had some people that were writing, they engaged us originally and were looking at having us write the application for them. We ended up not declining it because they basically waited till the last minute. We just didn't want to be involved in something. We want to protect our reputation of writing these applications, and specifically in this state, we understood that it was very robust and difficult. Well, they started out writing the application alone. They find out that it's 100,000 words, 5,000 words per entry, and now they're kind of stuck with it. And that's a sad thing to hear, because I think they were a very competent group and they could have done really, really well in the industry. So, all right. As far as too little time on the application, a question that comes up quite a bit is how long does it take? We say 2 months minimum, but I don't know. I don't know why people kind of push to the last second on that. They tend to do that. Maybe it's the shopping element of it. But 3 months is what we really want. We're involved in an application recently where they just called a press conference and moved the dates up. We pride ourselves on being first. We want to get the application in first, and because the way we write our applications, we're doing it. We're setting the bar, setting the standard there, and so we want that. We want to get in early. Waiting 2 months at minimum. Like I said a second ago, we had some last minute people come in just under 2 months, and we just declined it. It just wasn't going to work for us. And just given the amount of time, it stresses the system to just drop everything and do that. There's a lot of input that needs to take place from the applicant, and 2 months is the bare minimum there. Excuse me. All right. So mistake number 3 is overlooking construction and build out. So the first thing you want to start addressing there is this new construction or is this renovation? Are you retrofitting a building? And this is important because if you're just, you follow the normal steps of acquiring a property. You call a real estate agent, and you get that property sent over to them. You do an LOI, and then at that point, you're kind of, if you're working with someone who's not in the industry, they're not familiar with it, maybe you forget to tie the lease of that building or the purchase of that building being contingent on whether you get the license or not. That's something you want to include in there and work that language in there. It's absolutely worth engaging an attorney at this point to get all that in there. You don't want to be stuck with a 5-year lease, $400,000, and no license, right? No use permit, and really no way to go with it. So very, very important on that. New construction. This is very important. We see a lot of deals, frankly, that are too good to be true. When we see land in certain states, and we're like, wow, it jumps off the page of us. It's really, really, it's too cheap. Something's wrong here. And so we'll get out there, fly out there, take a look, do due diligence there. We're really good at that, and that's where our talent lies. And so understanding on the new construction side, we can look at a piece of property pretty quickly and have the end goal in mind. And it's one thing to engage building inspectors, architects, and construction professionals, but if they're not industry specific and they don't know what the building needs, then you're just kind of shooting in the dark. So on a new construction angle, if you're getting someone to build it and they don't really know what you're doing, maybe they don't include the upgrades that you need, and you're in a situation where you have to go back to ask the investor for some more capital there. So making a decision, number one, on are you going to do new construction, or are you going to do renovation? Also, are we talking about a cultivation center? Are we talking about dispensary? What do those look like, and does it make sense? So doing an analysis there, even if it costs you a couple $100 or so, or a consultant's time or an attorney's time, understanding what the difference of those, that's very valuable. Hiring a general contractor, I've done this myself many times. And I can tell you that there's just a different experience when you are working with people who are in the know and you've properly vetted this general contractor. It's a relationship with general contractor that can be a tumultuous one. It can be something that can make you absolutely miserable. So understanding who that general contractor is and their ability to get subs. Commercial construction itself has been booming for a number of years now. And depending on where you are, it's very, very common for these really, really good subcontractors to be tied up on a commercial job. And so understanding the timeline of that and getting really familiar with the capabilities of your general contractor are very important. And so most cases we're recommending a general contractor that we know can do what we want to do the way we want it done. So that's very important. It can make your life easy. Architectural designs, general contractor will remind you pretty quickly as soon as you're under contract that he's not an architect. And you'll find out quickly what this person cannot do as soon as you sign up and as soon as you start paying the draws. So addressing architectural designs, knowing that who can do that and what the costs are of those, is very, very important. So in addition to deciding on new construction and deciding on renovation and hiring general contractor, architectural designs are important. Next up is state and local permits. It's interesting. This comes into strategy a little bit of deciding where you're going to build. A lot of people will push outside the city limits in different counties because real estate is cheaper there. But in some instances, that county might have their own agenda. They might decide, okay, there's a lot of this marijuana money popping in here. We want to go ahead and use this marijuana money to upgrade our town or upgrade our county and improve things, roads and stuff like that. So understanding where you're building and the climate and the friendliness of it and what they think about cannabis is very important. You need insiders to figure that out. And state and local permits on the surface, you can just call a building inspector and you can call the building department and they can just tell you, oh yeah, it's X amount of dollars, but understanding the politics of that, and they are involved locally and at the state level as well. So addressing permit cost and not underestimating the time remaining and the time that you can get your permit. Very important. Construction itself will start finally, right? It feels like, oh, we've done all these things and now we finally get to start building. Construction itself has an entire animal. If you've never done that before, you're going to have surprises with that. And I can tell you that when you have a general contractor under contract, man, that's when you really find out who he is, right? And sort of you start to see that this job creep and different things and different, that's normal. 10-15% is normal of upgrades. A really good general contractor is actually going to be selling you along the way. You just don't realize you're being sold to. So there's a lot of stuff that you want to really be aware of, and hopefully have someone manage this process for you to save you money on the construction. One of the things I think we do very, very well, and we don't sell this as an individual thing, but just taking a look at plans and helping people. We've done that pro bono, and just looking, go, whoa, move this over here, do this over here. Your percentage is off. This is a disaster waiting to happen. Your guys are going to be walking a mile a day. It's unnecessary. You've got possible contamination going on in these buildings. Why do you have this way? We've seen it all, and we can, and sometimes we can help with that. But getting someone to manage that construction process will save you a ton of headaches, and you can focus on the marketing and the things that need to happen to sell your product. So inspection also, I think one of the big things overlooked here is timing of that. Understanding you're dealing with people that are busy in the building regulations, and so they're going to be, maybe they can inspect in a couple of months, or maybe they can't. So understanding the timeline of this is very important, and then getting in line with state and local building regulations goes without saying. So we're never factoring in, because we're very good at what we do. We're never factoring in the tear down and build and demo of something where you've made a mistake, or something that's built not compliant, or where you've put sheetrock in